La Dia de los Muertos is not Halloween. And that is what confuses a lot of us gringos. And there's two reasons why we get confused. I'll be mentioning both those. One is it happens around the same time, and there's a certain ghoulish character to the Dia de los Muertos. So just so we all know what Halloween is and why there is an intersection between these two, Halloween is All Hallows Eve, or the evening before All Saints Day, which is November 1st. In English, Eve or evening is often shorted, is contracted to E or E apostrophe En, and that becomes een. So we've got Christmas Eve, and I guess that's the best known Eve we have. But anyway, All Hallows Eve is Halloween. That's why it's officially October 31st. Trick-or-treating is a more modern idea, and it likely came into our culture through Irish immigrants, for whom that time of the year traditionally was a time of pranks. So actually, when I was a kid, we actually did do trick-or-treating, and technically you could trick someone if they didn't give you a treat. Now, a lot of kids don't even know that aspect. We used to soap windows or throw TP in trees when I was a kid. That dates me. But anyway, technically trick-or-treating comes in from that Irish culture. And somehow in the 50s, that morphed into getting candy to keep people from tricking. And then we just forgot the trick part altogether, though there is a lot of so Susan's correcting me. She's saying it's El Dia. You're right about that. I think someone told me that.
I meant that to be just for you. It's, correct in private.
Oh, thanks, Susan. That's okay to correct my Spanish. I think someone told me that the other day. They said it looks like it's El Dia de los Muertos. Actually, I often just heard it called Dia de los Muertos.
Yeah,
they often leave that.
There are a group of Spanish words that end in A that came from Greek that are masculine, and they take the L. Not very
El. Thank you. I'll make sure I get that corrected before the next time I show this class. People can always tell me stuff in these classes. I certainly don't know everything. Anyway, trick-or-treating is a relatively new thing, part of All Saints Day. It is a Catholic holiday. It is, and it's for everybody who's died. It's in case originally a long time ago, the idea was in case we miss some saints, we're going to give them all a day, because they're technically our saints that no one knows about. So that's where that comes from. That's very old. The video will explain a little bit of it. The Day of the Dead is a combination of All Saints Day and a pre-Columbian celebrations of the dead. It's celebrated in Latin America, not only Mexico, but it's a big deal in Mexico. And because we have so many people in the U.S. of Mexican heritage, it's a large percentage of people, by the way. It's like 15% of our population. It's a big deal. That's why it's becoming a bigger deal in the U.S. It's a 2-day celebration. So it's November 1st, November 2nd. I'll explain a little more about that. And it celebrates life. It really does. And the ghoulish images make us think it's not. And that's partly because our minds are conditioned toward Halloween, where there's ghosts and goblins and that kind of thing. We get all that mixed up on our heads. I can't, it's really hard for me to not see that. But anyway, that makes it very confusing for gringos like me. It is believed that on the Dia de los Muertos, the dead come back to visit us. The children come on November 1st and adults come on November 2nd. So these ofrendas, or these kind of altars you'll see more explanation of this, where there's food placed out for the dead who are coming, and it went for the children. They even sometimes put toys there, but they give children who've died their own day. That's November 1st. It's a big festival in Mexico, and some of the cities there are parades like this. People will really get into dressing up and making up their faces with the kind of ghoulish things. But I should point out that this skull image is a lot of what's in Dia de los Muertos, and we'll explain that. So I'm going to pause this 1 second. Let me just check here. And I'm going to share a video with you, but I got to make sure I'm sharing so that you can see this video. It's a little bit on the long side. I'm going to cut out one little section in the middle to shorten it up. As I said, I was trying to find a video. To me, the best thing would have been a Mexican explaining to Americans what it was from the point of view of Mexicans. And I kept getting a lot of the better videos are Americans trying to explain to other Americans what it is, or people in America. And the best one was in Spanish with English subtitles. That was too hard to follow. So I'm gonna try this a little bit differently here, and we'll look at this one. Then we can have a little bit of discussion. And let's see here. There it is. Let's pop away from that. And let's go into the video. Dia de los Muertos, a history. And this is on public TV show, public television.
Trick or treat!
Día de los Muertos, or Day of the Dead, is not the Mexican version of America's Halloween, but a 3,000-year-old celebration shaped by the indigenous pagan celebrations coming together with the Roman Catholic Church's All Saints' Day and All Souls' Day.
Dia de los Muertos is not Halloween. Some people even refer to it as, oh, it's Mexican Halloween. Well, it's not. It does fall along those timelines. So it starts at midnight at the end of October 31st, and it runs through the end of November 2nd. And it's known as that time where the line between the worlds is thin, the veil is thin, so the spirits are allowed to come home to visit. So you'll see that in lots of different cultures. And yes, they talk about that during Halloween. But again, it's because that festival lines up with All Souls Day and All Saints Day, and that's where the timing comes in.
Mesoamerican cultures had similar views towards death, practicing similar ceremonies. To the Nahua, the indigenous peoples of Mexico and El Salvador, death was only the dispersing of the human body, but the soul, considered a divine creation, moved into the afterlife. For the Nahua people, the soul went to Chikunamiclan, known as the land of the dead that was ruled by Mictlantecli, the lord of the dead, and his wife, Mictecacihuatl. The celebration roots began in Aztec, Mayan, and Toltec cultures. In Aztec mythology, Mictecacihuatl, known as the Queen of Mictlan, or Queen of the Underworld, her role was to keep watch over the bones of those who had died. In artwork, she is often pictured with her mouth open, symbolizing her ability to swallow the stars and brighten the day.
I like to think of the origins of Dia de los Muertos, or Day of the Dead, as being this cultural mashup. So think back to the days of the Aztecs and the indigenous peoples of Central America, and you've got traditional feast days. You've got a culture that celebrates death and the dead as going on to a better place or a different place, moving on through your life. Death is part of life. And so they had gods and goddesses that were in charge of death, as many cultures do, many mythologies do, whether it's Roman or Greek or Aztec. And so they had feast days. They had feast days that celebrated the Day of the Dead. And then you have Spanish colonization. So then you have Catholic, Spanish, Hernan Cortez coming over and colonizing this area. And so you have the Catholic saints, and you have traditional holidays like All Saints Day and All Souls Day. So it's this cultural mashup. It's two societies merging. So you have the Aztecs celebrating, and their traditional celebrations were in July. And then you have the November All Saints Day, All Souls Day. So what happens when indigenous peoples are colonized? Things merge. So all of the Aztec gods and goddesses became associated with Catholic saints. And then they took the celebration of the dead and kind of merged it with All Saints Day and All Souls Day. And so you have aspects of both things. You have honoring the dead, talking about this time where souls can come to earth and remember and revisit. And so they're mashed together. So that's how